Hello and welcome to Capitol Hill. Today, the long-awaited Productivity Commission report on the carbon tax, more details on the so-called Malaysia solution and the latest in the live cattle debate. All that shortly, but first to our panel. In Melbourne, Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg, and here in Canberra, Labor Senator Doug Cameron. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Josh.
Well, first today, the Productivity Commission has this afternoon released its long-awaited report into the carbon tax, but the government and opposition have very different takes on what it says.
This report today shows absolutely conclusively that Australia is in about the middle of the pack, along with the United States and China. And because of that, we are actually in danger of being left behind. So this report gives lie to the accusation that somehow Australia is leading the world. We are not.
There is no other comparable country which is imposing an economy-wide carbon tax on itself. There's no other comparable country which is imposing an emissions trading scheme on itself. What that means is that any move towards a carbon tax or emissions trading scheme would be an economic own goal. It would be an act of economic self-harm by Australia.
Well, Josh Frydenberg, to you first in Melbourne. Is the opposition leader really making a scare campaign by declaring the death of the coal industry? And doesn't this report really show that an ETS is the best way to reduce carbon emissions?
Look, Tony Abbott's quoting directly from the Productivity Commission's report, page 50, with its key message that no other country in the world, Andrew, has an economy-wide tax on emissions or an economy-wide ETS. So not only is our Prime Minister in an absolute breach of faith with the Australian people now proposing a carbon tax, but she's also going alone and is going to punish households. Our message to the Australian people is you can tackle climate change without a carbon tax. And we're proposing a whole set of renewable energy measures, including 1 million solar homes, including biosequestration, including 20 million trees, and a whole series of other measures through this emissions reduction fund which we're proposing.
But isn't it those very measures
that's the best way,
that this report has targeted, those smaller government measures that this report says are more expensive?
Not at all, and we're using a market-based measure with our emissions reduction fund, Andrew, and what we're saying there is we'll go and find the lowest cost abatement measures out there through incentives to industry and penalties to industry too. And we think that direct action proposal or policy that we have is a lot more cost effective and a lot more efficient than economy-wide carbon tax, which is only going to do really one thing, which is going to lift the electricity prices and the energy prices for Australian households and families. And whatever the price the government decides to price a tonne of carbon, whether it's the $20 or $26 or $40 that Deloitte was talking about, that's going to lead to a greater burden for Australian families, and I don't think Julia Gillard can run away from that.
Senator Cameron, today you've been part of a Senate committee examining the carbon tax. First of all, what do you say to Josh Frydenberg's claims?
Well, what I say to Josh Frydenberg is it's about time he started learning basic economics, because we've been getting basic economics all day today from the Treasury, from the Productivity Commission, and each one of them say clearly that the best and most effective and most efficient way to deal with carbon pollution is to have a cap and trade scheme. And the antithesis to that is this direct action approach which costs the taxpayer money and will not deliver.
To you, Josh?
Can I ask Doug, then why has President Obama abandoned his cap and trade scheme? Why is the Canadians not pursuing a cap and trade scheme? Why isn't Japan? I mean, I think the critical point here, Andrew, is that this Productivity Commission report looked at 9 countries. It didn't look at Indonesia, Brazil, South Africa, Russia, all energy-rich countries like Australia. And Julia Gillard can go out there and quote David Cameron in the UK and what the emission targets they're undertaking, but their economy economy is completely different to Australia's. They have nuclear power in the United Kingdom. They're a net energy importer. Australia gets $55 billion a year in export income through coal, and we have a massive resources sector, and I think Labor is in denial about this, and Doug Cameron, who should know better, being a union activist, should know better about Australian workers and Australian jobs, and it's in their best interests that we don't pursue a carbon tax.
Well, can I tell you, we're not going to fall for the scare campaign run by Tony Abbott. It's clear that this direct action approach will cost $30 billion. It's clear that both in the Productivity Commission report and the analysis from Treasury that the longer it runs, the more expensive it becomes, and it's the taxpayers that are paying. Taxpayers pay for direct action, and what we are saying is the polluters must pay. That's the important message from the Productivity Commission. The most effective and best way to deal with carbon pollution is to make the polluters pay through a market-based system, and basic economics dictates that. And I'm just surprised that that it only seems to be Malcolm Turnbull in the coalition that seems to understand this concept. I think there's more understand it, but they're just done backflips on it like yourself.
Josh, you did flag the measure of nuclear. Is that something that Australia should really be addressing too? Should we be trying to look at whether nuclear is an answer?
Look, it's not the coalition policy to pursue nuclear, and after the Fukushima incident in Japan, a number of countries are re-examining it. I mean, my point generally is that Australia has committed to a renewable energy target of 20% of its energy by 2020. This is something the coalition has initiated and very proud of, and we are proposing a whole lot of renewable energy measures, and we're investing in those measures, whether it's solar, whether it's trees and stopping deforestation, which itself is responsible for 20% of the world's emissions, deforestation alone. But what Labor is proposing is this punitive carbon tax, and it's bizarre for Doug to come out and say that we want to tax the Australian consumer when you're the only one proposing a carbon tax.
Well, we'll move on now to another contentious issue. Yesterday on this program, Labor MP Anna Burke expressed some concerns with the Malaysia solution. She's taken those up with her minister, but she's also worried about the standard of debate on asylum seekers in Australia.
But I don't think we've had a good public discourse about it. I've received thousands of emails about cows and sheep and the terrible treatment of that. I haven't received thousands of emails concerned about people getting onto leaky boats and drowning.
Doug Cameron, not so long ago you spoke out about so-called zombie politicians in the caucus. Are you happy to see that MPs are now speaking out, particularly on things like live exports?
I think the zombies are now in the coalition because they won't speak out against the nonsense that their leader is spewing out about job losses and the like. And it's good to see a dynamic caucus. It's good to see people standing up and saying, this is what I think and here's the issues. It's good to see a debate. And that was something I was concerned about. I think the zombie is now with the coalition and certainly not with Labor.
Are you happy, though, with the Malaysia solution?
I'm happy provided the UNHCR give it the tick. I'm happy provided our international obligations are met. I'm happy provided we stop people getting killed on boats.
And to you, Josh Frydenberg, we've seen the Immigration Minister release a few more details today. Would they satisfy any opposition concerns?
Look, we think that this Malaysian solution is a dud, and I'm surprised that Doug won't follow Anna Burke and Melissa Park's outspoken calls for this policy to be scrapped.
Well,
it was 1 month ago. It was
Josh,
you're not brave enough.
They haven't said that.
Oh, what have they said? They've criticised it. They've criticised it, Doug.
No, they've said exactly what I said, Josh, and that is, provided the UNHCR tick it off, they will support it. Provided
no, they've been much more critical. No, that's spinning it, Doug. You have accused your caucus colleagues of previously being lobotomised zombies, and now you're not prepared to join Anna Burke and Melissa Park in a growing call to review this policy. It was 1 month ago. It was 1 month ago that Julia Gillard and Bowen announced the so-called Malaysian solution. We still don't have an agreement. Now, 4 weeks on, we've had in that that time 300 unauthorised arrivals come. Now, will they be part of the deal? And if not, we're being now told, under these new announcements by Chris Bowen, that some people won't be sent to Malaysia. So what sort of deterrent will it be?
Out of sight, out of mind, and that's what exactly you did when you were in government. You sent them off to Nauru, you tried to forget about them, you treated them inhumanely. People that eventually got access to this country were there for 5 years. So don't lecture the Labour Party about morality and rights. You have got no credibility. Absolutely none.
Doug, can I just say, Doug, we've tried your Labor solution to border protection. Look what's happened. Since 2008, more than 10,000 people have come. The average time spent in detention in the last couple of years has gone from 60-odd days to 170 days. Places like Christmas Island and Villawood and elsewhere are crumbling because there are just too many people. There are 3 critical incidents a day around Australia, and you have been forced to have a blowout in your budget of more than $3 billion. See, Doug, I just want to ask you a question, Doug.
You can't
I just want to ask you, Doug, I want to ask you, how do you say to the Australian people that you as a government have been prepared to build more detention beds than hospital beds? How do you look the Australian people in the face about that?
If you were fair dinkum about this, you would accept that this is an international problem, a national problem and a regional problem.
It was always an international issue.
And we have to deal with it that way. Simply setting up another Nauru and sending people off for years to rot is not the way forward. The Malaysian approach, provided it's humane, provided the UNHCR are there, is a far better proposition.
Josh, on Nauru, a few people have suggested Tony Abbott's upcoming visit there is a stunt. Would you describe it differently?
Wouldn't be a bit
Absolutely. I mean, well, what he's saying is, why won't Julia Gillard pick up the phone to Nauru? Her original opposition to it was because they weren't a signatory to the Refugee Convention. Well, is it Malaysia? No, it's not. So why won't and Nauru has already said they're prepared to consider that. So I just think this is hubris on the part of the government that it won't actually pick up the phone to Nauru with a proven solution. John Howard's Pacific solution worked. And now we have the alternative Labor solution, which is more than 10,000 people coming in an unauthorised way.
Just finally to you, Doug Cameron, are you entirely satisfied with the live exports?
No, I'm not. I think that we've got a huge problem, and I'm not sure whether the Indonesian problem is the tip of the iceberg. Seems to me that there is significant problems. I don't think Australia can have a trade based on inhumanity and cruelty to animals, and I'm very concerned about it, and certainly I'll be having a point of view about that at the next caucus meeting.
Should it be extended to sheep, say, suspending those?
Look, I think the whole live animal trade is really a problem. I didn't support it when it first came out. We had a thriving industry for meat processing in this country. That has basically disappeared. 30-odd thousand jobs have disappeared. My view is that we should look at how we can be a meat exporter of chilled meat that is properly dealt with so that it can be exported around the world. That would be my preferred.
So you would abandon then live animal exports? Would you abandon live animal exports?
If live animal exports are like what they are now, yes, we should.
OK, and just on that note, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you very much to Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg in Melbourne.
Thanks.
And here in Canberra, Labor Senator Doug Cameron. And we'll be back here at the same time tomorrow. Good night.
See you, Josh.